Tobias Marshall. I'm a filmmaker and I'm director of Chimes of Midnight.
My name's David Marshall. I'm a photographer, musician and writer. We've collaborated on the screenplay for the Chimes. I've heard the Chimes of Midnight. I also play the old blues man. It's just coincident that I happen to be an old blues man.
I've worked in the film industry for about 10 years, and it's only recently I've started to make my own films, and I didn't feel that I had the right to touch a camera until about 5 years in, because I was working with cinematographers and I'd watched them work, and I just thought there was so much to learn. Even now, I think anyone, if they're not learning, you should stop making films, because it's a never-ending process. And yeah, it was only recently that I felt that I was ready to step away as a camera assistant and give that up and make my own films, and that's what's led me to produce this film. Growing up, there's a lot of films which are shot in black and white, and that's one of the reasons why I've shot this film in black and white, was just love of. I mean, we had a darkroom where all the VHS tapes were, which we used to print.
Develop films and print.
Black and white prints. And so there's always a love of black and white, but there's films like Citizen Kane, The Hustler, it's these kind of films that just I watched as a kid. I was only like 8, 9, 10, and just watching these films, and there's always a real strong feeling in these films. It's not something any other kid would be watching. Of course I watched other films, but it had a strong effect on me as a youngster, and this is why the films I want to make have a strong personal message. And I work as a cameraman predominantly, but there's a few films I want to make, and I kind of maybe every 10 years, but I want to do it. And this is what this film's about. Is it's a short film, but I really want to make my statement of how I want to tell a story, and it might be very personal, but I can be a professional cameraman and I can be a filmmaker that way.
This particular film, well, just briefly, I've always written. I'm never intended for publication. I just like writing. Several novels I've been writing for years. This only really came up as an idea a few weeks ago. Tobias rang me up and said, "Look, I'm going to send you the script. See what you think of it. Add, change it if you want." So I just made some brief amendments, sent it back, and then we met up and we agreed the outline, and then we wrote the lyrics for the song. So it basically taps in, because To's my son, he knows my interests and influences, obsessions, and this little short really coalesces all these elements. So we've got the aging blues man who, having lost his faith, is still looking for redemption. That's the name of my band. Redemption is a theme that permeates the work of Wagner, Dostoevsky, Sam Peckinpah. Always attracted to those ideas. Men who've gone off the rails, been bad men, but still they need to atone for their sins. And as Peckinpah's grandfather used to say, "Enter my house justified," and that is a biblical quote. So that's what we try to capture.
Which is a lyric in the song.
It's a lyric in the song.
Yeah.
And it just dawned on me when we were writing that last verse. There's a church just around the corner. We could see it through the window, Toad's flat in Limehouse, and it started tolling. And I suddenly added the last verse, "I've heard the chimes of midnight." Now, I can't claim the credit for that. Actually, it comes from Shakespeare. It's Henry IV, Part 2, when Falstaff and a friend, just a minor character, are sitting around a fire, coming up to midnight, the end of a long day, and it's the minor character who comes out with a remarkable line, "We've heard the chimes at midnight, Master John," and Falstaff says, "Aye, that we have." It's the church bell tolling that sparks off the thought, and he's talking about approaching death. When we hear the chimes at midnight, if you imagine life as a 24-hour span, and that's coming to the end. Okay.
And that's what's really important for me is aging, and it's because we had a member of our band pass away a few years ago, Vincent, to cancer, and in the scene we shot yesterday in the pub, Robert Parr is a character. I mean, it's important to say that the film is semi-autobiographical. It's not actually my dad's life, because I didn't want it to be a documentary. I wanted it to be a film in its own right. But I took, you know, a great deal of influences from my dad's life. And the character Robert Parr has a friend in the pub, and we established that friendship, and they don't necessarily need to talk. They spent so much time together like old friends do, and it's timeless. They don't need to worry about chatting, you know, or anything like that. They could just sit there for hours every Wednesday, or maybe every day of the week. But in the scene, we track back and we track into then down to look at a stall to suggest that maybe there was a third member there was a third friend who's passed away. And that's an important part of aging, is, you know, we're heading towards this moment where we're not going to be live any longer. And, you know, it's kind of it's a fear of mine, is my parents dying, you know, and it's a terrifying fear, but also it's a strong emotion. So that's, I guess, where a lot of the connotations in this film, and maybe the reason why I wanted to get this film made, and it's kind of the idea came because there's a lot of feelings from my youth that come out in this film, especially the church scene. My dad's all about seeking redemption. That's why, you know, we mentioned earlier that the band's called Redemption Blues Band, and so yeah, it was important. As soon as I had the idea, it was like, this goes ahead of anything else, and that's why I just moved straight into production with it to get it made. It's such an important film for me that I just had to put out all the stops, and I'd always wanted to shoot film, because that's why I got into being a film loader, because I just loved film running through the gate. When you hear that sound, you know that's cinema. You know, and to touch it with your hands, I never grew sick of loading film or carrying heavy boxes of, you know, mags with film in it up and down cliffs, because I just felt it was making film. But when it turned digital, it all changed for me. As an assistant, it just, even though I was carrying less, those boxes were heavier, because it didn't mean the same to me. And that's one of the reasons why I quit, really, because it almost became like computers rather than something I understand, which is physics. It's very tangible, you can feel it. It's the same with a film, you know, film camera, you can feel it, whereas digital, it's just not the same. Digital just doesn't come anywhere close to film, because film is a chemical reaction. That light comes from the sun, or, you know, maybe comes from a light, but comes from the sun and then gets exposed, and is actually a latent image forms in the film. It's hidden there until you bring it out with chemicals. So that light has actually come, you know, it's actually real, whereas digital is just an interpretation of light. It's not actually the real light. So it just will never have the same look of film, and that's the thing, is they're trying to make a digital thing look like film, and they'll never get there. You know, it's just like there's a roll off and focus, so that even if you've got shallow depth of field, because there's layers to film, rather than hitting like a flat plane like it is with a digital sensor. There's a bit of depth, so things kind of have a little bit more of a roll off of focus, and that just looks beautiful. And then also just the latitude, but also the shift in it, because there's like every bit of negative is different, so it's like a living organism, so it will act differently, respond to light differently, and it's that shift just that makes it, you know, beautiful. And, you know, it's cost me a lot more money to produce this film, to shoot it on film, but as soon as I put my eye to the eyepiece and I saw it flickering, I was like, I don't want to shoot anything else, really. You're not making films unless you're shooting on film, if I'm concerned. So, you know, and for me, it's really important as a young cameraman. You know, Kodak has helped me massively, and Ari, by backing me with cameras and with film stock. Because I said to them, look, I'm you know, a young cameraman. I've shot 2 features. You know, I'm hoping to shoot 3 or 4 next year, and I really want to push for film. I want to keep film alive. I want to be someone who's actively fighting for film. You know, yeah, you know, I'm not quite there yet. I can't command big budgets, but I kind of want to be fighting that fight now, and making sure that I can shoot film for the entirety of my career, and then hopefully people after me can be shooting film, because it would just be a great shame. It's like vinyl. Mm-hmm. It's like the music is real, you know. You know, that is a scratched in sound wave, you know. It's not like just some digital interpretation, so it's always going to sound better. It's just money. So yeah, there was no option for me.
With the blues, I've I discovered it when I was in my early teens through rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and then I discovered people like Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf, and it was a music I just instantly related to. I just loved the raw emotion of it. And it's not necessarily about woke up this morning blues walking around my bed. It's about engagement with life, about pleasures, joys, pain, suffering, the whole gamut. It just seemed to me to be a music that just went raw to the emotions, and he hopes through this film to encourage people to discover the blues.
Maybe. I don't think I'm hoping for anyone to
not to be
like the blues. I just think, for me, I just want to express the life of an old aging blues man who doesn't necessarily play big gigs, but he just keeps going because he loves the music. That's what it's about, and that's pretty much what my relationship with my dad, is you just love to play the blues, and that's kind of where another inspiration from the film came from. Was doesn't matter your age, if you love life and you love art, it will keep you going. Means you get up every day, and that's why also it's the merging of the crafts. It's my dad's craft and it's my craft as well as filmmaking, and I won't stop to not make a film. There's nothing that could stop me. I'll just find a way, and I'm sure with my dad's music as well, is when picks up the guitar, there's nothing that's going to get in his way. He's just going to play the music and he's going to feel it, and
but I guess to sum up, Tobes has said this, so there's an interesting parallel between what the two sides of this. There's the aging blues man trying to carry on the blues, and there's a young filmmaker wanting to carry on with film. So there's two great aspirations there running in parallel, and in some way it does help the preservation of film, the use of film, so that people can continue to enjoy real celluloid at 24 frames a second, which is truth, as Jean-Luc Godard said.